This really happened to me when I was 22 in Austin, Texas. I've changed a few names, not the facts, because I can still hear the courthouse elevator ding like a metronome for my heart. The betrayal hit me in the first beat of the hook. A vinyl launch banner snapped taut in a renovated East Austin warehouse, and there, centered, was my hand-drawn desert swallow with a ribboned tail, the exact mark from my moleskin, while my brother tapped the mic and said, "I designed this myself." The grommets creaked, craft IPA foam stung my nose, and on the merch table someone had laid out my prototype box, complete with copper foil swallow and the serif I personally kerned, like a body on a slab. Grace, his co-founder in a white blazer, looped her hand through my boyfriend Evan's arm as they watched the banner rise. Her nail caught on his sleeve, and he laughed like a man who'd never been caught at anything. That laugh landed harder than the mic feedback. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. I'm Aurora Rory, UT Austin visual communication major, barista 2 blocks off campus, owner of one reliable bicycle with a squeaky back brake. My brother Miles is 3 years older, a former high school quarterback turned beverage tech founder, which is Austin for marketing with a co-packer. He came back from a stint in San Francisco with a gray hoodie, a VC vocabulary, and a grin that made our mother light candles at St. Austin's for his success. He has always been a center of gravity. People orbit because it feels warm. The swallow was mine. It started as 50 thumbnails in a black moleskin I bought on sale at Book People, line tests done with a Pilot G2 I kept losing and finding in my hair, the tail curled under like a ribbon. I built it in Illustrator, played with negative space, tested it small and large against cream stock. Professor Barnett, wiry, 60, all birds and opinions, called it sharp but benevolent, which I wrote on a sticky note and hid on my mirror. Miles saw the sketches at my apartment in Hyde Park on a sweaty Saturday, 2 cans of Spindrift sweating rings onto our wobbly IKEA table. "I need a brand," he said, already pocketing my attention like loose change. "Grace has buyer meetings at Central Market next month. Your swallow is perfect. We'll credit you. It'll help your portfolio. Mutual lift. Mutual lift." I wanted to believe the phrase. 2 siblings rising together on the same thermal. I started iterating on weekends, meeting them at the Starbucks on 24th, sliding comps across sticky tables, adjusting the beak angle while the blender shrieked. Grace nodded politely, like she was appraising a condo. Evan, my boyfriend, with the vintage Michigan sweatshirt, smiled and said, "We're a team," then flipped his phone face down on the tabletop. Suspicion was a wire humming under my skin, but I ignored it. I wanted to be the useful little sister. I tightened kerning until it clicked like a seatbelt. I designed a die line for a box that closed with a whisper. I printed a prototype at a campus print lab and ran my fingers over the copper foil. In my head, I could see my portfolio case study. A modern swallow for a modern brand. I didn't write, "A swallow I'll need to defend like a castle." The pre-humiliation arrived on Instagram. My brother's account captioned, "Our founder's creative journey." A boomerang of him palming a sketchbook with my swallow half visible. "Designed in-house by Miles," the caption said. The word in-house made my stomach curdle. I texted him, "Seriously?" He replied, "Semantics, house is family, we'll update later." Later is a word that wears other people's time like a coat. I tried to be calm. I asked Evan, "Do you think they'll correct it?" And he kissed my forehead and said, "Babe, choose your battles," while a text from a number saved as G flashed, "Heads up, the folio shows your name LOL." He turned the screen away like it was the sun. I felt the wire under my skin pull tight. The launch party was a fever dream. Industrial beams, Edison bulbs, a rented sound system that made every S sound like a snake, a dessert table that was just glazed donuts on thrifted cake stands. Grace glided. Miles shook hands. I stood near the merch table, bouncing on my heels so I wouldn't bolt, staring at my box, the exact stock, the exact foil, the exact swallow, like a dog that recognizes its toy in someone else's yard. When Miles hit my design into the mic, the phrase crackled as if the speakers themselves didn't want to carry the lie. And then Evan's phone lit. Gee, Hotel Folio has your name, LOL? The wire snapped. I didn't yell. I took pictures. I filmed Miles's founder pitch. I took one of the boxes and slid it into my tote next to the moleskin that had lived on my hip all semester. On the sidewalk outside, someone had written, "Be kind" in chalk that was now melting into the cracks, and I laughed, which sounded like a sob. The next morning, I did things a girl does when she decides to stop being polite and start being formal. I scanned every Swallow page at the Fine Arts Library, naming files by date and time. Swallow zo rough .pdf, swallow beak tilt zograo5.ai. I emailed the files to both my student account and my Gmail, then uploaded to Drive, then downloaded to a hard drive I labeled Aurora Proofs, like I was my own archivist. At the UPS store on Guadalupe, I paid for a notary, 6 I couldn't spare, to witness my signature on a sworn letter about creation dates. The notary wore a Texas Longhorns pin and said, "You'd be surprised how often artists come in shaking." I held my hands flat so she wouldn't see them tremble. Professor Barnett had given a lecture that Tuesday on IP. Copyright protects original works fixed in a tangible medium. Trademarks protect source identifiers used in commerce. The world will take what you don't protect. He wrote the phrase in block letters and slapped the board. After class, I asked, hypothetically, what if someone close was already using your logo? Timestamp everything. Register your copyright today, he said, softening. Trademarks cost more, but file if you intend to use the mark to identify your goods. And Rory, stop handing your genius over like a casserole. That night, I faced Evan in his West Campus apartment, an L-shaped couch, a dying succulent, a pool view of an inflatable flamingo. "Are you seeing Grace?" I asked. "That's insane," he said, stirring his coffee like there might be a miracle at the bottom. "She's my boss's business partner. You know how optics—" "Then why does a Hotel Folio put your name under hers?" My voice didn't wobble. It surprised me. He opened his email like a man performing a trust fall and produced a Marriott confirmation from Dallas, a boutique hotel confirmation from downtown Austin, both showing 2 guests, both with midnight room service, grilled cheese and champagne, macarons, and sparkling water. The secondary guest read, Evan. The primary was Grace. There was a mirror selfie he had failed to delete. A bob grazed the frame. His sweatshirt hung off a chair like an alibi on a hanger. "You have to understand," he started, as if there was a script that could unscramble this. "I don't," I said simply, "and you have until noon to get your things." When he returned with a friend and Trader Joe's paper bags, I handed him a folder. Printouts of the receipts, the Instagram caption, my notarized affidavit, dates highlighted in yellow. He stared at the folder like it might bite. "You're overreacting," he tried. "I'm documenting," I said, and shut the door behind him. Miles's power bloomed like algae, quick, green, suffocating. Investors posted selfies with cases of cans bearing my swallow. A billboard went up over Lamar with the bird so huge it looked like it might fly off the steel and into the river. Grace posted a TikTok about founder creativity, tagging "Wow Hustle" and "Dao Origin Story." If I'd let myself cry, I would have drowned. Instead, I walked into the law school building and followed a paper sign to the IP clinic. Priya, a third-year law student with cuffed jeans, a T-shirt that said "Protect Your Joy," and the calm patience of someone who had built boundary fences around her heart, listened without interrupting. She asked for timestamps, drafts, witnesses, the timeline. She said words like statutory damages and likelihood of confusion and smelled faintly of peppermint tea. First, we register your copyright. It's cheap, strong leverage. Then we file a tease application for the stylized mark in your name for your goods and services. Meanwhile, we send a cease and desist with a license proposal. Credit, back pay, forward royalties. If they refuse, we escalate toward an injunction. I don't want to bankrupt my brother, I said. I want the truth printed where the lie is. That's the most reasonable revenge I've heard this week, she said dryly. It also happens to be lawful. We filed the copyright that afternoon. The tease application took me 2 hours because I triple-checked every class and description: non-alcoholic beverages, packaging, retail store services. We attached my scans, my class assignment rubric, a letter from Professor Barnett. Then we sent a letter to the company's registered agent that began, "Dear Counsel," and ended, "We look forward to your prompt response." The spine of the letter was steel. The tone was cordial. I signed with my whole name to remind myself I had one. They wrote back with a shrug typed in legalese. "We appreciate Ms. Lane's enthusiasm. The mark was a collaborative brainstorm refined by our founder. We decline a license at this time." They addressed me as Ms. Lane, but CC'd Miles like a pat on the head. "You give a child in public." Liv, my roommate with a laugh you can hear through a wall, became my cheerful spy. She went to a Whole Foods tasting in Bee Cave and filmed the display. "Who designed your logo?" she asked the brand rep in a polo the color of hospital walls. "Our founder," he beamed. "He's a creative visionary, sketched it backpacking in Utah." On camera, a tabletop plaque read, "Designed by Miles." I added it to the spreadsheet I'd started. Date, link, asset, description, location, evidence eats anxiety for breakfast. A week later, my trademark application hit the official Gazette for publication. Priya bought me a sprinkle cupcake from a food truck, and we ate it on a bench, knees touching. "Your brother's counsel will get serious now," she said. "Injunction hearings are public. Investors hate that." They tried charm. Grace called me from a no-caller ID number and said she wanted to clear the air. I told her to email counsel. She sent a neat, corporate paragraph offering to make me brand ambassador and a slot in their creator collective if I would drop the contentious filings. It was cat's pawing yarn and calling it a sweater. I forwarded it to Priya, who replied with a draft of a motion that read like a storm warning. My parents sat at our kitchen table the night before the hearing. My mother picked at a napkin until it looked like lace and murmured, "He's your brother." Like a prayer, she wasn't sure how to finish. My father, who reads paperbacks until 2 a.m. and waters his plants with a spray bottle like he's baptizing them, said, "Boundaries are love written down." He squeezed my shoulder. My mother made a casserole she didn't eat. The Western District Courthouse smelled like cold air and old carpet. I wore a navy shift dress, little gold hoops, hair back. I carried my moleskin like a talisman. Miles and Grace sat 2 rows ahead, their counsel whispering like a radio in a bathroom. Grace turned around once and looked at me with an expression that was neither apology nor hate, just calculation. I realized I was free of needing anything from her face. We didn't need the judge's full thunder. The clean paper trail, my registrations, the spreadsheet of ongoing use, the likelihood of success on the merits. Investors fidgeted. During lunch, their counsel asked for a conference room and slid a proposed settlement across a wood table with a swampy carpet. It offered back royalties, forward royalties, attorney's fees, blessed relief, and credit lines in 12-point type on packaging. It proposed a social media correction post that said, "Designed in collaboration." "No," I said. Priya didn't kick me under the table. She let me talk. "The truth is this. Designed by me before any commercial use, licensed thereafter. My name on the box, on the site, on the billboards, in the About page. A public acknowledgement at their founder's birthday fundraiser. They'd already announced a charity gala for literacy, a PR jewel. with the admission from the stage while the cameras are rolling. Their counsel rubbed his temple. Humility is a big ask for founders. I'm not asking, I said gently. I'm exchanging leverage. He suggested we workshop the optics, an acknowledgement at the gala post-montage, founder framing it as a learning moment. I tasted the sugar of poetic justice and tried not to smile. And, I added, no more in-house claims anywhere. Preserve all docs. If they breach, the injunction hits the next business day. They went into a side room to fight with themselves. Out the window, a woman in a denim jacket crossed the street carrying a plant so big it hit her face. When the door reopened, the proposal mirrored ours closely enough that my lungs forgot how to be fists. On paper, the war ended. In my body, it was still blazing. The gala would be the water. A month later, beneath a ceiling of soft lights in the JW Marriott Ballroom, the brand hosted Miles's birthday fundraiser for a literacy nonprofit. Company teal uplighting, silent auction items with little stands, a bar menu with a mocktail named after our mother's maiden name, which I found audacious and a little funny. Liv squeezed my knee like she was defusing a bomb. My parents sat in the second row. My mother clutched a rosary. Priya stood near a potted palm like a dignified bodyguard. A highlight reel played. Time lapses of canning lines, kids in sponsor tees, Grace talking supply chains like a war story. The MC brought Miles on. He did the founder script. Humble roots, big dream, scrappy hustle. Then he paused. Right on cue, because contracts don't ask, they dictate. And the room shifted. There's a part of our story we told wrong, he said, voice steady in the sound system that had been tuned by a professional this time. We said our logo was designed in-house, by me. It wasn't. It was designed by my sister, Aurora Lane, before we ever used it. It's licensed from her, and we're proud of that. She didn't just make us look good, she made us do right. He looked toward me, and the cameraman, a man in black with a headset, swung the lens. My face hit the Jumbotron screen above the stage. I stood up without shaking. The swallow glowed behind us, and for the first time since it left my sketchbook, I felt tenderness toward it again. I didn't hug him. I didn't perform magnanimity. I stood and let the truth sit on the room like a heavy welcome blanket. A donor at the next table whispered, "That's her?" Like I was a myth they'd just discovered in daylight. After the event, a teenage girl in a floral dress found me by the dessert table where the lemon bars were already sweating. "I draw," she said, eyes huge. "My aunt says we're family when she uses my designs. What did you do to not cry at them?" "I cried somewhere else," I said, and I wrote it down, and I hired help. Priya, grabbing a lemon bar, waved. The next morning, I woke to a box on my porch. Inside, a first-run packaging sleeve, the swallow in copper foil, with my name printed at the bottom in 12 points of proof. Logo design by Aurora Lane. I set it on my desk next to the moleskin. My apartment felt bigger. I could almost hear my boundaries humming like a refrigerator. Good, clean, ordinary power. Continues in chunk 2-2, chunk 2-2. War doesn't always announce a ceasefire. Sometimes it dwindles into paperwork and habits. The settlement agreement moved money across wire transfers that spelled out back royalties and forward royalties, calculated per unit sold. I bought myself a used MacBook that didn't sputter when I opened Illustrator and paid 3 months' rent in advance so I could sleep without numbers rattling around my brain. My father hung a cheap frame around the page that mattered most, Exhibit B, credit language, and insisted we put it up in the hallway like a kid's report card. My mother baked too much banana bread and wrapped slices like gifts. She still said, "He's your brother," but her eyes added, "And you're my daughter." Grace's unfollow came like a lack of weather. She pivoted, like people with immaculate wardrobes do, to a new skew with a minimal sans serif and a soft gradient. She curated errors out of existence on the public feed. Privately, I imagine she absorbed the loss the way you tuck a snag inside a sweater and keep going. Some nights, I caught myself imagining the text she didn't send, the 3 words women shouldn't have to starve for. You were right. I learned to live without them because my bank account now said I didn't need their courtesy to eat. Evan relocated to a smaller skyline with softer teeth, Tulsa or Des Moines. I could never keep straight, and posted a photo of a city park and a caption about fresh starts. He sent me a message in the tone of a man who had just realized the last 10 texts were prayers to the wrong altar. I'm sorry. I panicked. She made me feel valuable. I typed and deleted 3 drafts, then left the message unread. The river had already learned a new route. I didn't need to go sluice the dry bed. At school, the hallway outside Professor Barnett's room got new posters. My senior project, Know Your Rights, hung in a tidy row. Copyright isn't a bad word. Trademarks are boundaries. Credit is currency. Freshmen paused to take pictures. Someone wrote, "Yes, Rory," in pencil on the corner of the "Credit is currency" poster, and I pretended I didn't know who it was, though Liv smirked and wouldn't meet my eyes. Liv and I developed a new ritual. Saturday mornings at HEB, a run for groceries and gossip. She'd steer the cart like a competitive sport, while I read labels like a lawyer. We found my swallow on a mid-aisle display, copper foil catching the fluorescent lights, my name printed neat as a pulse line. Liv would walk up, stage whisper, "That's my roommate," and flee before the demo rep could ask for a selfie. Once, a woman with a toddler in the cart stopped me and asked, "How did you make them say it out loud?" I told her, I didn't make them, contracts did. The toddler grabbed my finger and I thought, if little girls made contracts for feelings, the world would break in better ways. The IP clinic held a creative rights night in a Stark classroom on a Thursday. I spoke for 10 minutes and tried to keep my voice from turning into a tremor. Priya, poised as ever, added clear bullet points. Register early. Time stamp. Don't confuse kindness with consent. A kid in a UT baseball cap asked if it was mean to send a cease and desist to a friend. Mean is letting someone build their resume on your back while you apologize for your spine, Priya said, which made the room go quiet, in the way truth does. There were consequences inside the family. Some of them, slow drip. Miles didn't call for 2 months. When he did, he swallowed and said, "I'm going to therapy." I didn't clap. He said, I'm sorry. The syllables careful, like stepping stones over water. I said, "Oh, thank you." Because I am not cruel, and not being cruel was a choice I wanted to keep making. He asked, "Do you think we can?" And I said, "In time?" Because fences need gates, but they also need latches that click. One afternoon, I biked to a coffee shop on South Congress to meet a freelance client, a tea startup in Ohio that found me via an email that began, "Saw your story. I've been scared to ask for credit." We sat at a two-top by the window. David Bowie watched us from a mural, and as the sun slid down the sidewalk like honey, the founder, a black woman with the kind of focus that made me sit up straighter, slid across her sketchbook. I handled it like something alive. "I want a mark that doesn't get stolen," she said. "I want the contract baked before the brand." We wrote terms lightly on a napkin. We moved them to a Word doc. We sent them to a lawyer. She paid my deposit that afternoon. Later, she emailed me a photo of her shelf mock-up, and I stared at the clean lines and thought, this is what unafraid looks like on paper. In the quiet after the lawsuit, when the paperwork filed itself into folders and the bank account stopped feeling like a creature that might bolt, I had time to hear my own story, not as a drumbeat, but as a melody. It began to include things I'd pushed out to make room for adrenaline, the way the campus live oaks framed the sky, the smell of library stacks, the amateur mariachi group that practiced on the mall on Thursdays at 6. I went to a reading at Bookwoman and met Jordan, a grad student with a shy smile and hands that tucked his phone face up on the table like a declaration of peace. He loved documentaries about architects and the way Helvetica looks smug. He listened twice before he spoke. When he asked what the copper foil box on my shelf meant, I told him the truth without theater. He said, "I'm proud of you." With no ownership staked in the sentence, he became my ritual, slowly, like sunrise. There was one more obstacle, the smear campaign I didn't know I'd been bracing for. A friend from a co-working space DM'd me a screenshot, a private Slack of Austin startup guys, a thread headlined, "Beware litigious designers." My name appeared, then a half meme about girls who can't take a team win. I felt the old wire twitch. I sent the screenshots to Priya, who responded with a sentence that could cut glass. Defamation requires falsity. This is opinion. What you need is a spine made of laminated yes. We didn't send a letter. We let the thread die the way cowardly things do, in their own stale air. Liv printed it out, blacked out names, and taped it to our fridge with the caption, "We are the litigious girls your dad warned you about." We laughed. The laugh tasted like victory without salt. The company's About page changed. The paragraph, "Our founder designed the mark," became, "Our logo was designed by Austin-based designer Aurora Lane prior to our launch and is used under license." On packaging, under the nutrition facts, the credit line ran like a thin river. At first, it shocked me every time, like catching my name on a stranger's lips. Then, it settled into the landscape of my life, like an intersection you forget used to be a four-way stop. I sent thank you emails to everyone who had made space in the battle. Professor Barnett, who emailed back only "proud period." The notary at the UPS store, who wrote, "Come back anytime you need a stamp." Our student clinic director, who attached a photo of 6 new artists waiting in the hallway outside her office. The girl from the gala in the floral dress, who DM'd me a photo of her first invoice with the words "pay upon receipt" circled in red. On a humid Friday in May, I biked to the Lamar footbridge and leaned on the rail. Below, rowers sliced the water clean. Above, the sky thought about raining and decided against it. I pulled out my Moleskine, version 2, its cover scuffed from living, and drew swallows that had nothing to do with packaging or litigation. Jordan texted a photo of tacos and the words, "emergency dinner." I texted back a heart and "bring limes." My phone buzzed again. An email from a mid-sized outdoor brand asking if I was available for a seasonal mark and if I could advise on IP protections baked into the SO. I closed my eyes and said thank you to every version of me who had sat at a sticky Starbucks table and refused to fold. If you asked me for the lesson, I could give you the bullet points. Register your work. Timestamp. Keep drafts. Don't confuse "we're family" with "I own you." Hire counsel. Make the revenge about truth, not blood. But bullet points are bones. You come here for muscle and skin. So here's the one image I will keep so long I hope it burns into the back of my eyelids when I'm old. A copper foil swallow gleaming under a grocery store fluorescent light, and beneath it, a clean line of type that says my name, and beyond that, a girl in a floral dress at a gala, and further still, a UPS store clerk with a stamp, and further still, a courtroom elevator dinging like a metronome, and farther still, a young woman opening her email in Ohio and typing, "Saw your story. I'm not scared to ask anymore." Months later, Miles invited me to coffee. Not to strategize, not to pitch me on a rebrand, just to talk. We sat at Better Half on West 5th. He brought a granola bar like a peace offering. He said, "I'm not the hero of your story." I said, "You were never supposed to be." He looked hurt, then relieved, like a man who'd finally stepped off a float in a parade meant for someone else. He asked if I would ever design for him again. I said, "If you hire me at my rate, sign the contract, pay the deposit, and let me own my name. If you can do that, maybe. If not, no." He nodded. He didn't ask for a family discount. On the way out, he pointed at a case of his cans in a cooler and said, "You know, that looks better because your name is on it." It was the smartest sentence I'd ever heard him say. I sleep now. I had forgotten what unstartled sleep felt like. In the quiet, I hear new ideas land. I wake with outlines in my head that are about color palettes and the smell of summer at Barton Springs and a zine I want to make about the signage history of Austin honky-tonks. I put my phone face up on my desk when I work. I surround myself with people who do the same. Sometimes, on purpose, I take the original box out of its sleeve, the one I made in the campus print lab before anyone's fingerprints smudged its edges, and set it next to a store-bought version with my credit line. The copper glows. The swallow looks like it might fly off the paper. I think about little me, about swallows and ribbon-tails, about wanting to be useful, about learning that useful doesn't mean used up. I think about my mother's candles and my father's spray bottle and my brother's future therapy appointments and Liv's refrigerator collage and Priya's peppermint tea and the way the courthouse elevator dinged for every floor on my way to a courtroom where nobody shouted and the truth did not need a microphone, only a paper trail. The last time I biked past the billboard on Lamar with the swallow swallowing the sky, I didn't flinch. The sky was a clean blue. The bird belonged to the sky and, in its printed form, to me. A jogger slowed, took a photo, and said to nobody, "Cool to see a woman's name up there." I wanted to tell him the story. Instead, I shifted into an easier gear and let the downhill carry me. It felt like the opposite of theft. It felt like being carried by something I had built with my hands and my spine, and the word "no" said at the exact right time. At home, there is a thin drawer in my desk labeled Proofs. Inside, a notarized affidavit with a $6 stamp, emails with subject lines like publication confirmation, a spreadsheet of links and dates, a copy of the settlement with my favorite page dog-eared, and a Polaroid of Liv and me on the night of the gala, our faces swollen with laughing, the caption in her messy handwriting, "We did illegal." When I am old, I want some version of me to open that drawer, run her fingers over the paper edges, and remember the hum of a wire under her skin and how it changed, how it turned into a song she could sleep to. For now, I keep working. I take meetings. I design. I ask for credit like I'm placing a coffee order, clearly, calmly, with a smile that says, "I know exactly what I want and exactly how much it costs." On the shelf above my desk, next to the plant that refuses to die and the bowl of limes Jordan brings over because he knows they brighten everything, sits a box sleeve with a copper foil swallow, and, beneath it, a line of letters that spell my name the way a bridge spells crossing. Most nights, before I turn out the light, I read the line once, just once, and let it be enough. The rest of the night belongs to sleep, and to the girl who picks up a pen in the morning and draws a new bird, because she can, because no one else gets to say otherwise, because she learned the only way to make a story true is to write it down and sign it. The end